A millionaire returns home unexpectedly, cutting his business trip short. But the moment he steps through the front door, screams echoing from near his daughter's room send a jolt of panic through him. When he rushes upstairs, the scene before him nearly brings him to his knees. His daughter is kneeling before a mirror, her mouth moving in a frantic, ceaseless chant of apologies, while his second wife stands there, casually watching. So, sit back, relax, and let's listen to this story together. I hope you will feel inspired, find a sense of happiness, and deepen your empathy as you listen. Finally, I hope this story serves as a catalyst to help you sleep better tonight. Let's begin. Daniel Carter arrived home a day earlier than expected, wrapping up his 3-week business trip ahead of schedule. He pulled his suitcase through the grand foyer of the sprawling estate, a place that usually hummed with soft background jazz or the sound of Lily running across the hardwood floors. But today, the house was draped in an unsettling silence. The vast space felt as though the air had been sucked right out of it. He called out, "Lily?" But his voice simply dissolved into the void. Daniel lived here with Evelyn, his second wife, a polished woman from the media industry who was always impeccable in her presentation, and his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily had always been a vibrant, gentle soul who trusted her father implicitly. Yet, lately, during their video calls while he was away, he had sensed a vague distance in her eyes, a shadow he couldn't quite place. He walked down the long corridor, heading toward the dressing room that connected to the main living area. As he approached, the reflection of the hallway lights on a large mirror caught his attention. In the glass, Daniel saw the tiny, trembling figure of Lily, kneeling flat against the floor, her hands placed purposefully in front of her, as if trying to maintain a precarious balance. Her small feet were curled awkwardly, her shoulders hunched tight, her back straining to stay straight despite the tremors running through her body. And behind Lily stood the silhouette of Evelyn, arms crossed. She didn't bend down. She showed no urgency to help. Evelyn looked at Lily the way one looks at a task that hasn't been completed to satisfaction. As Daniel moved closer, he heard Lily murmuring. She was reciting an apology in a rhythmic monotone drone, without pause, as if the cadence and pitch had to be executed perfectly. Daniel took another step. It was only then that he saw the shards of shattered glass on the floor, still steaming. It wasn't hard to deduce that a mug of hot water had just been dropped. The scent of steam lingered in the air, mixing with the faint, acrid smell of scalded skin. "Lily," Daniel called out softly. Lily flinched so violently she almost toppled over, then immediately ducked her head low. Her tiny hands shook as if they had just touched something agonizing. Her eyes didn't dare look up, her breath hitching in short gasps, as if his mere presence meant she was about to be reprimanded. Evelyn turned around, her voice as calm as if everything were proceeding according to a schedule. "You're back early. I was just teaching her some household rules." The girl dropped a cup of hot water. Daniel looked straight at Lily's hands. Across her skin, angry red blisters were visible, some fresh and crimson, others darker, as if they were old wounds that had healed and been aggravated again. He felt his chest tighten, a physical weight crushing his lungs. He knelt down to his daughter's eye level. "What happened, honey? Let Daddy see." Lily recoiled sharply, scrambling backward with the reflex of deeply ingrained fear. She spoke in a whisper so quiet it barely formed words. "I'm sorry. I dropped it." "I'll do it again," Evelyn interjected. "She's extremely clumsy. I told her to be careful, but she spilled it all over the floor. I'm just showing her how to take responsibility." Daniel looked up at Evelyn. "Why didn't you call me?" "It's a minor issue. You just got back. It wouldn't make sense to worry you over nothing." Daniel didn't respond. He looked down at the floor and touched a shard of glass. It was still warm. That meant this had happened only minutes before he walked in. Lily continued to mutter her apology, every word heavy and labored. Daniel reached out to help her stand, but Lily immediately pulled her hand away, bowing her head even lower. "I didn't do it right yet. I have to apologize more." Evelyn stepped forward, tapping Lily's shoulder lightly to correct her posture. "You have to recite it exactly as I instructed. Don't change your tone. Do you remember?" Lily nodded slightly, her lips trembling in time with some internal count Evelyn had instilled. Daniel stood frozen, observing his wife's efficient handling of the situation, but the cold detachment in her movements made his entire body tense with unease. He turned to Lily. "Stand up. Daddy's taking you to wash your hands." Lily glanced up just for a second. Her eyes betrayed a terror of committing another error. "I haven't finished apologizing." "You don't need to apologize anymore." Evelyn stepped in, blocking the space between father and daughter for a split second. "You're confusing her. Let me finish this." Daniel's voice turned icy. "I said, that's enough." Lily stood up slowly, her legs numb and stiff, causing her to sway. Daniel reached out to steady her, but she panicked and dodged to the side, a reaction that hurt him more than any physical blow could. "Are you scared of Daddy?" Daniel asked, his voice barely audible. Lily shook her head rapidly, clasping her hands in front of her. Her face was etched with unconscious fear, as if the reaction was a survival instinct that had taken root deep inside. Evelyn observed the two of them and spoke nonchalantly. "She's overly sensitive. I have to correct so many things with her." Daniel took Lily's hand, holding it firmly this time to offer reassurance. She stopped pulling away, though the trembling didn't stop. He led her toward the light to get a better look. The red welts on her skin made his blood boil. He asked, "Did you drop the cup because your hands hurt, or because it was heavy?" Lily hesitated. I was getting hot water for Mom. I was scared of spilling, so I tried. But my hands, they sting?" "Did you tell Mom you were in pain?" Daniel asked. Lily bit her lip, silent. Evelyn cut in. "She's just making excuses. I don't want her growing up irresponsible." Daniel noticed how every one of Lily's reactions was directed first at Evelyn, then back to him, as if waiting to see what the adults would decide to do with her. She didn't have a single moment of peace. That was what sent a chill down his spine. He stood up, turning to Evelyn. "I'm taking her to wash her hands." Evelyn stepped back, crossing her arms. "If you want to turn a molehill into a mountain, fine. But don't forget, I'm the one here taking care of her every day while you're gone." Daniel didn't reply. He led Lily away. But as they stepped out of the dressing area, Lily froze, her entire body locking up. The freeze response made it impossible for her to take another step. Daniel bent down. "What is it, sweetie?" Lily opened her mouth, but the words broke into a small, choked sob. Evelyn stood behind them, her gaze sharp and observant. Daniel realized Lily didn't dare step over the exact spot on the floor where the cup had shattered. She stared at the puddle of cooling water as if it were a boundary line she'd been forced to memorize. He scooped Lily up into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck but kept shaking, her breathing shallow. Daniel could feel her trying desperately not to cry. As he walked away, Lily stole a glance back at the mirror. In that reflection, Evelyn stood motionless in the background, her eyes marking a lesson that wasn't yet over. Daniel carried Lily out of the corridor. But the moment he reached for the bathroom door, Lily suddenly gripped his shirt tightly, burying her face in his shoulder as if trying to hide from a gaze behind them. Evelyn appeared in the doorway of the dressing room, standing still, watching. In that moment, Daniel felt his spine turn to ice. He said nothing, reaching out to flip the bathroom light switch. The instant the bright light clicked on, Lily curled into a ball, flinching violently as if struck. Daniel stood there, paralyzed for a second, stunned by her reaction. Daniel carried Lily out of the dressing area, her frantic, shallow breaths hitting his neck like a silent plea for help. He held her tight, walking briskly through the grand hall, barely noticing his own suitcase abandoned by the door. Daniel opened the car door, placed Lily in the back seat, then moved around to sit right next to her, buckling her in and keeping her hand enveloped in his. "Daddy's taking you to the doctor, okay? We're just going to check things out." Lily lowered her head. "I don't want to see strangers." Daniel gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm right here. Don't be scared, okay, sweetheart?" He drove straight to Dr. Jameson's clinic, the physician who had monitored Lily since she was 3. When they arrived, the waiting room was busier than usual. Adults and children filled the chairs, whispers mixed with the shuffling of feet. Lily shrank into Daniel's arms the moment they stepped through the door. Daniel held her close to his shoulder. "It's okay. No one is going to hurt you." When their turn came, Dr. Jameson took one look at Lily and said immediately, "Come on back. Let me take a look at her." Daniel closed the exam room door and lifted Lily onto the examination table, but she immediately clawed at his collar, refusing to let go. The doctor signaled with his hand. "It's fine. Keep her on your lap." Daniel sat on the chair, settling Lily on his legs. A young nurse approached with a tray of instruments. She offered a gentle smile, intending only to place some gauze on the table. But the moment she inched closer, Lily jerked violently, her legs kicking at the air as if searching for traction to escape. Lily let out a small but terrified scream. "No, don't come here." Daniel hugged her. "It's okay, it's okay." "You're with Dad." The nurse stepped back slightly, but accidentally bumped the table leg, causing the metal tray to clatter. Lily immediately burrowed into Daniel's chest, her hands gripping his shirt so hard her knuckles turned white, her body trembling uncontrollably. Dr. Jameson looked at the nurse. "Step back. Give them more space." The nurse moved toward the desk, but even her turning away caused Lily to fold over, burying her face in Daniel's lap, her breathing coming in jagged gasps. Daniel looked up, worried. "She's never been afraid of nurses like this. Doctor, what's wrong with her?" The doctor sat down opposite them, his voice lowering to a calm cadence. "This is a reaction seen when a child has associated fear with the image of a stranger in authority. The white coat is likely just a trigger." Daniel looked down at his daughter. "Lily, can you show the doctor your hands? Daddy will hold you." Lily squirmed, slowly pulling her hand from Daniel's chest. She moved inch by inch, terrified her hand might be touched. When her palm was revealed under the light, Dr. Jameson went silent for a beat. New blisters mingled with dark marks layered over each other from different times. Daniel stared at his daughter's hand, his heart constricting. "How did you get so many marks?" Lily whispered. "I did it wrong. Many times." "Did what wrong?" Daniel asked. Lily shook her head slightly. "I don't remember at all. Mom said I have to remember. But I get confused." The doctor set his pen down. "Daniel, these marks aren't from a single incident. They occurred over various stages. Most are caused by heat." Daniel swallowed hard, a heavy sensation spreading through him. "How long has she been like this?" Lily tightened her grip on his shirt. "Mom said I have to practice remembering the rules. If I remember wrong, Mom says I have to apologize again." Daniel turned to the doctor. "What does she mean, practice apologizing?" The doctor spoke clearly. "When a child is forced to repeat an apology over and over until it meets a specific standard, it creates a conditioned response. Every time they feel fear, the child will mutter apologies out of habit." Daniel recalled the image of Lily kneeling before the mirror, mouthing every word perfectly, never missing a beat. His chest felt like it was filled with stones. The doctor asked, "Lily, before you go to sleep, what do you usually have to do?" Lily rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, her voice as faint as a breath. "Mom says I have to read the apology, read it in the right rhythm. If I read it wrong, then Mom says, no dinner tomorrow." Daniel felt his hands shake. "What has she eaten the past few days?" Lily answered quickly, as if afraid of being stopped. "I ate some crackers." The doctor looked at Daniel. "This is a sign of psychological control exerted every evening. Most children this age cannot withstand that kind of intermittent pressure." The doctor continued the exam. Lily trembled slightly but tried to stay still. When the doctor touched a piece of gauze to a blistered area, she flinched reflexively but remained silent, as if she was used to bearing pain without being allowed to react. Daniel looked at his child with aching pity. "Does it hurt?" Lily shook her head very fast. "No, I can do it. Mom says I have to be good, so Mom will be happy." The nurse, standing at a distance and looking concerned, took 2 steps forward to hand a file to the doctor. Just those 2 steps caused Lily to launch herself off Daniel's lap, diving straight under the desk in front of them. Daniel froze, then bent down to look. "Lily, what's wrong?" Under the desk, Lily curled tight against the wall, covering her head with her hands, breathing in broken gasps. Daniel knelt, trying to reach into the shadows. "Lily, it's Dad. Come out to me." Lily shook her head continuously. I didn't say it right. Mom says I can't come out when I'm wrong." Daniel tried to reassure her. "No one is testing you anymore. No one is making you recite anything." But Lily kept pressing herself into the corner, as if the mere sight of a white coat pulled her back into a familiar cycle of punishment. The doctor spoke softly behind Daniel. This is a reaction scene when a child has been locked up or left alone in a confined space to endure pressure. Hiding in a corner is the way she self-soothes, finding the safest place she was taught. Daniel listened, feeling the world tilt on its axis. He touched his daughter's hand gently under the table. But Lily recoiled sharply, hitting her head on the underside of the desk. Daniel quickly put his hand up to shield her. "Lily, I'm not going anywhere. Look at me." Lily breathed rapidly. "Mom will be angry. Mom says I have to practice again," Daniel said immediately. "That's over. You don't need to do anything. Just come out here with Dad." Lily was silent for a few seconds, but her body was as taut as a wire. Daniel looked at the doctor, his eyes begging for help. The doctor nodded slightly. "Try giving her a sense of control. Don't pull. Let her place her hand on yours first." Daniel took a deep breath, placed his hand palm up on the floor, not touching her. "I'm right here. You just grab my hand when you want to." Lily stared at that hand for a long time. Her sharp breath still hissed in the silence. Then she scooted a fraction, her fingertip touching Daniel's. A touch as thin as a thread, but enough for Daniel to feel the fear flooding through his child. Suddenly, the door creaked open softly. The nurse had returned to place a file on the side table. That tiny noise caused Lily to jump, her whole body curling up as if preparing for a blow. Daniel exclaimed, "Wait!" and dove down, reaching deeper under the table to shield Lily with his own body. Daniel drove back home in silence. Lily sat in the back, her head resting against the window, clutching an old teddy bear Dr. Jameson had temporarily gifted her. When the car stopped, Daniel turned off the engine but sat still for a few seconds. He turned to look at his child, whispering, "We're home, honey. Dad is here now." He carried Lily inside, keeping his voice gentle to avoid stressing her, but as soon as he crossed the threshold, Daniel noticed a strange atmosphere. A delivery person was standing at the door, handing a large bag to Evelyn. She seemed hurried, pulling the bag toward her, trying to hide the store branding. Seeing Daniel, Evelyn forced a smile, speaking as if she had just remembered something. "You're back. I was just buying a few things for dinner." Daniel nodded, saying nothing. He carried Lily up the stairs, feeling Evelyn's gaze burning into his back. In Lily's room, he set her down on the bed. "Do you want to change first?" Lily only shook her head slightly. Daniel drew the curtains and looked around, realizing several of her favorite toys, a cloth doll, a small framed drawing, were missing. He opened the closet. The toy shelf was half empty. It felt as though the room that belonged to Lily was being rearranged according to a strange new order. He bent down and whispered, "Do you know who put your things away?" Lily hesitated, her eyes darting toward the door. "Mom said, my room was too messy. She cleaned it for me." Daniel stood up straight, trying to maintain his composure. He poured water for her and went to the kitchen to get some crackers. When he opened the pantry, the box of cookies he had ordered the week before was still unopened. He distinctly remembered telling Evelyn to save them for Lily. Not a single cookie had been eaten. His phone buzzed, a message from Sarah, his older sister. The screen showed a photo sent from an unknown number. "Don't let anyone know I contacted you. Evelyn isn't simple. I used to work at your house." Under the photo, Sarah added, "This is your former housekeeper. She quit after only 3 weeks, didn't collect her last paycheck." Daniel frowned, calling Sarah. "Where did you find her info?" "She messaged me directly. Said she was forced by Evelyn to do strange things. I think you should check the personnel files." "I'll do it right now." Hanging up, Daniel opened his laptop in his study, accessing the internal system. He pulled up the list of housekeepers from the last 6 months. 3 consecutive employees had quit, all signing papers stating, "Not a good fit for the environment. No complaints, no wage demands. Too clean, almost artificial." The phone rang again. It was Lucas, the company accountant and manager of the estate's security system. "Daniel, do you have a minute? I just checked your home cameras." "Is there a problem?" "Yes. Several video segments are completely blank during the exact times you were away on business. No technical glitches. The system recorded a disable command from Evelyn's account." Daniel went silent for a moment. "Which cameras did she ask to disable?" "The kitchen and the rear hallway. She said she needed privacy to clean. I found it odd, so I kept a copy of the activation log. Send it to me immediately. Just as Lucas hung up, Daniel heard a noise from the backyard. He walked out to see Mr. Whitaker, the neighbor, crossing the fence line with a coiled garden hose. Good evening, Daniel. Long time no see. Mr. Whitaker, has anyone visited my house while I was away recently? The old man looked up, furrowing his brow. I didn't intend to pry, but a few times I saw a black car parked at the gate. A well-dressed man, not one of your staff, entering the house after 8 p.m. Do you recall the license plate? Not clearly, it was too dark, but I'm certain it wasn't the first time. Daniel thanked him and returned to the house, his mind heavy as lead. Walking through the living room, he saw Evelyn slamming the study door shut. In her hand, she clutched her phone, the screen briefly illuminating a strange number. Evelyn hid it quickly, asking in a calm voice, Did you finish taking her to the doctor? Yes. The doctor said she has burns from multiple different occasions. Evelyn blinked. Children are clumsy, you know that. I don't think that's it. Are you suspecting me? Daniel looked straight at her. I'm just saying, this cannot continue. Evelyn gave a short laugh, placing her phone on the table. If you're tired, go rest. Don't let outsiders influence you. Which outsiders? The housekeeper or the man in the black car? Evelyn froze, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. Who did you hear that from? Whitaker. He said he saw a stranger coming here multiple times. You trust the words of a neighbor over your own wife? Daniel didn't answer. He walked toward the stairs, calling out, Lily, where are you? From the second floor, Lily peeked out from behind a curtain, her small hand gripping the banister tight. Her eyes were a mix of relief and terror. Evelyn looked up, her gaze landing right where Lily stood. That single look was enough. Lily curled inward, vanishing into the hallway. Daniel turned back to Evelyn. You're scaring her. She's just overly sensitive. I only want her to learn manners. No, you're making her live in fear. You don't understand, Daniel. Everything I do is for her own good. Enough. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. You need to leave this house. Evelyn let out a short laugh. Are you joking? No, I'll have someone make the arrangements. You can take your things, but you are not to go near Lily again. The room fell into silence. Evelyn looked at him, her expression shifting from shock to cold calculation. You think you can kick me out that easily? I don't want a scene. I just want this to end. And the girl? You think she'll just forget everything? Daniel clenched his fist. I will take care of her. You worry about yourself. Evelyn stepped back, pulling out her phone. You'll regret this, Daniel. I'm not simple like the other women you've left behind. And I am not a man easily controlled. For a few seconds, they stared at each other, neither speaking. Then Evelyn turned, walking straight into her room, slamming the door hard enough to make the painting on the wall shudder. Daniel stood still, inhaling deeply. He looked up the stairs, seeing the curtain on the second floor sway slightly. Lily was still hiding behind it, revealing only a sliver of her face. He called softly, Honey, Daddy is here. There was no reply, only the small shadow of his daughter retreating further into the dark hallway. Daniel took a step up the stairs. Behind the slightly ajar door of the study, Evelyn's eyes flashed for a moment before disappearing. He approached, pushing the door open to find his daughter standing pressed against the wall, her shoulder jammed into it, eyes wide and staring into the empty space before her. Honey? He stepped closer, gently touching her shoulder. Lily's body was unusually cold, not shivering, not flinching, just standing still as if frozen solid. Daniel could feel her breath was very shallow, so rhythmic it seemed detached from reality. He called her name a few more times. No reaction. It took nearly 5 minutes for Lily's eyes to blink. She turned her head very slowly, looking at her father, then retreated deep into the room, taking small steps as if afraid to make a sound. Daniel didn't dare speak further, only watching silently. Lily sat on the floor, pulled a box of crayons from a small drawer, and spread drawing paper on the rug. Daniel sat near the door, observing. She chose only 2 colors, red and black. Without looking, he knew those shades had appeared in her previous drawings. Lily began to draw. The first lines formed a rectangle consuming almost the entire page. She colored it black, using forceful, decisive strokes. After filling the shape, Lily used the red crayon to draw a border, tracing heavily around the frame. Daniel looked at the image, his mind slowly recognizing the familiar shape. A door. In the center, Lily drew a red padlock, reinforcing it multiple times as if afraid someone might miss it. He inched closer, but didn't touch her. "What are you drawing?" Lily didn't answer, her hand moving faster. Every time the crayon hit the paper, her shoulder trembled slightly. Daniel realized that whenever she got to the padlock, her small hand shook more intensely. He lowered his voice. "Where's this door?" Lily looked up for a second, then immediately looked back down. "In my room." "Which room?" "The old room. You don't sleep there anymore." "But that door's still there." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He looked at the drawing, then at his child. Lily's hand slowed, exhausted. When she stretched her arm, her sleeve rode up, revealing faint marks on her skin, pale red patches mixed with darker lines. He grabbed her wrist, intending to ask, but Lily immediately snatched it back, hiding her hand behind her back. Daniel breathed slowly, taking out his phone to call Dr. Jameson. "Doctor, she's still having these freezing episodes. Now she has a habit of drawing doors, coloring them completely black. I think she's remembering something." The doctor's voice on the other end was slow and deliberate. "Mr. Carter, those reactions are signs of a child who has been isolated in a confined space. The feeling of being trapped creates a reflex fear of light and sudden noise. You should observe more. Don't touch her forcefully, just be present nearby." "Do you think she was locked up?" "I can't say for sure, but those behaviors often appear after a child has been confined in the dark for too long. It could be a punishment." Daniel fell silent. He remembered the nights Evelyn said Lily was afraid of the dark and had to get used to it. His throat went dry. Lily continued drawing, but now she stopped. Her eyes drifted toward the wardrobe in the room. Daniel followed her gaze. The cream-colored doors, silver handles, they seemed normal, but in Lily's eyes they were something that made her take a step back. "What is it?" Lily didn't speak, just pointed a trembling finger at the wardrobe handle. Daniel stood up, walked over, and placed his hand on it. "This door?" She nodded slightly. He opened it. Inside there were just clothes and old shoeboxes, but a distinct smell wafted out, an indescribable mix of air freshener and stale, humid wood. He looked around and saw a small chair with a broken leg in the corner and a rolled-up blanket. "Lily, were you in here?" Lily nodded silently. "Mom said I had to sit still in there until I apologized correctly." "For how long?" "I don't remember. When the lesson was over, she opened it." Daniel stepped back, sitting down on the floor at her level. "You don't need to go in there anymore. No one is allowed to scare you ever again." Lily said nothing. She lowered her head, twisting her hands together. He gently touched her shoulder. "From now on, this door stays open. No one locks it." Lily glanced at the door, as if she didn't fully believe him. "If Mom comes back, she'll be angry." "I'll be here. Mom will yell at you." "I'm not afraid." Lily was silent, then suddenly pulled a fresh sheet of paper, drawing another door. But this time, inside the frame, there was a faint yellow light in the center. Daniel let her be, saying nothing. He understood she was trying to change the image in her memory. When Lily put the crayon down, Daniel took a warm cloth and wiped her hands gently, avoiding the swollen areas. She didn't resist, just staring at her hand for a long time, as if weighing something. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "If I don't apologize, will Mom come back?" Daniel lowered his head, keeping his voice steady. "No one needs you to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." Outside the window, the backyard lights flickered on. The sound of wind slipping through the blinds made Lily curl up slightly, but she didn't leave her spot. Daniel looked at her, realizing she still had the reflex fear of sudden sounds, but she hadn't run away like before. A small sign, but a beginning. He stood up to close the blinds when he heard a noise downstairs. Something fell softly, then silence. Lily held her breath, her eyes fixed on the stairs. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, speaking softly. "Stay here. Don't go out." Daniel sat at the dining table, his coffee long, cold, untouched. Outside the window, the morning spilled in, thin and cold, casting a misty haze on the glass. Lily was sitting in the living room, silent beside her crayon box, while Daniel waited for his sister, Sarah, to arrive. He had texted her last night, asking her to come early. The doorbell rang. Sarah walked in, her purse slung over her shoulder, her eyes tired but determined. She placed a brown envelope on the table. "This contains notes from Mary, the one who used to work here. She messaged me last night." Daniel opened the envelope. Inside were several folded sheets of paper, the handwriting round but messy from haste. Mary recounted her days working at the Carter house, evenings when Evelyn forced Lily to stand in the dark closet for hours just because she didn't recite the rules correctly. Daniel went numb. He read slowly, line by line, his gaze stopping at the final sentence. She told the girl she had to memorize 10 things she wasn't allowed to do. If she forgot, she was punished by not eating. Sarah sat down next to him. Mary also took pictures of a few pages from the rulebook Evelyn wrote. "I think you should see." Daniel opened his phone, viewing the attached photos. The 10 rules were written in black ink, numbered clearly. Do not look at adults without permission. Do not ask questions. Do not cry when being disciplined. At the bottom of the page, Evelyn's signature sat neatly. Looking at that signature, he felt his fingers curl into a fist. "How long have you known about this?" Sarah looked down. "I only heard vague rumors from former staff, but when they quit, no one dared to speak clearly. I think they were afraid. 3 people quit in 6 months." Daniel opened his laptop, accessing the HR system, all signed with the exact same reason: not a good fit for the environment. "Did you ever ask Evelyn?" "Yes," she said they couldn't handle the discipline. His phone buzzed. Lucas was video calling. His face appeared on the screen, a background of data-filled monitors behind him. "Daniel, I just found this. The account used for household expenses has multiple shady withdrawals. I traced them back and found they went to a company called EVE Solutions, but this company doesn't exist in the tax database." Daniel frowned. "She set up a shell company." "Highly likely. I also discovered the signatures on the transfer orders match perfectly, like a copy-paste. It looks like Evelyn used a digital signature template, not a real signature." Sarah glanced at Daniel, seeing him grip the phone tighter. "Lucas, I need you to keep copies of all transactions. If anyone asks, say it's an internal audit." "Got it. Oh, and one more thing. Your home security system had multiple segments cut on the days you traveled. It wasn't a glitch. Someone requested the deletion." Daniel nodded slightly, thanked him, and hung up. He wondered just how long Evelyn had been constructing this perfect facade. A light knock sounded at the door. Whitaker, the elderly neighbor, stood outside holding a small USB drive. "I know you're busy, but perhaps you should hear this. I placed a microphone in my garden because neighborhood cats were messing up the flower beds. But instead of cats, I picked up other sounds, like inside your house." Daniel invited him in and plugged the USB into his laptop. The first file played, static, then a woman's voice rang out, shrill and clear, followed by Lily crying, choked and broken. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel stared blankly at the screen, the color draining from his face. The voice in the file was unmistakably Evelyn's. She forced the girl to repeat the apology. "Listen, every sentence has a rhythmic count," Sarah said, trembling. Daniel played the second file. This time, there was only the sound of Lily crying for a long time, then abrupt silence. No adult voice followed. The 3 of them sat motionless, no one speaking. "What do you think we should do?" Sarah asked. "I can't think anymore." Daniel stood up, pacing the room as if to keep himself from exploding. Everything she did was calculated. Evelyn didn't just terrorize the girl, she manipulated the finances too. "Are you going to the police?" "Not yet. I need direct evidence." The doorbell rang again. Sarah went to open it. A middle-aged woman stood outside, petite with her hair tied back. She clutched a handbag, her hands shaking slightly. "I'm Mary. Sarah said I could come here." Daniel approached, inviting her in. "Thank you for coming. Can you tell us everything?" Mary looked around, her eyes stopping at the staircase leading to the 2nd floor. "Where is she?" "Upstairs. She's safe." Mary exhaled in relief. "I'm sorry for not speaking sooner. When I worked here, I saw things I didn't dare believe. Once I heard Lily crying in the closet. I tried to open it, but Evelyn said it was a teaching method. She forced me to stay silent." "Do you remember the last time?" Sarah asked. "Yes. That night, Evelyn said Lily had to relearn the rules. She was locked up all evening. When I served breakfast, she didn't eat anything, just sat staring at the door. Daniel was silent for a long time. Do you still have the notebook you took photos of? Mary nodded. I brought it. She took out a small notebook with frayed edges. I smuggled it out. I couldn't stand seeing her treated like that. Daniel flipped through the pages, reviewing the prohibitions. The final line made him freeze. If rules are broken, stand in darkness until the proper way to apologize is learned. Sarah grabbed Mary's hand. Thank you for speaking up. You can help us submit all of this to the police. Mary nodded, but her hand still trembled. I'm just afraid Evelyn will come back, Daniel cut in. She won't be coming back, I guarantee it. Soft footsteps sounded from the second floor. Lily stood on the stairs, looking down. She gripped the handrail, her face pale white. When she saw Mary, her eyes went wide. Then she began to shake. She remembers her, Sarah whispered. Mary took a step up, her voice choked. Lily, I came to visit you. Are you okay? Lily didn't answer, only backing away. Daniel raised a hand. Honey, it's okay. She's here to help. Lily kept backing up. Her foot slipped off the edge of the step. Mary screamed softly. Careful! Daniel bolted up a few steps, catching his daughter just before she fell completely. His arms wrapped tight around her small, trembling frame. Lily buried her face in his shoulder, letting out a small hiccup, her breath coming in short bursts. It's okay, Dad's here, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Mary stepped back, afraid of frightening the child further. Daniel carried his daughter down to the living room, settling her onto the sofa and waiting until Lily's breathing stabilized. It's okay. Nothing's wrong, he whispered, though her eyes remained wide, staring at nothing. Mary stood near the window, pulling the curtain back slightly, then suddenly stiffened. Daniel, she called, her voice strained. He walked over, looking where she pointed. Outside the estate gates, a black car had just pulled up. A tall, thin man stepped out, his gait strangely familiar. Whitaker, the neighbor, was standing on the other side of the fence, signaling to Daniel. That person came here a few times while you were away, he said loudly enough to be heard. Daniel looked closely. That face, he had seen it briefly at a company party. Adrian Cole, a financial consultant previously investigated for investment fund fraud. He had worked for Evelyn on several private projects. Before Daniel could react, Mary gasped, Evelyn! From the back door of the mansion, Evelyn appeared, dragging a small suitcase. She scanned the yard, her eyes alert. Without needing to guess, Daniel understood she was preparing to leave the house. Mary trembled, tugging at his sleeve. She plans to run. Daniel moved toward the door just as Evelyn handed the suitcase to Adrian. He popped the trunk, shoving the luggage inside. Evelyn said something, her tone urgent. Daniel was about to open the door to step out when red and blue lights suddenly flashed across the fence. A police car sped into the driveway, tires crunching on the gravel with a hiss. Sarah stepped out from the back seat along with two officers. She looked at Daniel and gave a firm nod. Lucas sent all the evidence. They're here to take action. Evelyn froze, her face maintaining a veneer of calm. Adrian hurriedly pulled out his phone, swiping quickly. An officer spoke up. Please turn off your device and hand it to us. Adrian protested, I'm just calling my lawyer. Phone now. The officer's voice was decisive. He shot a sharp look at Evelyn. She pursed her lips, nodding slightly, signaling him to stay silent. Daniel stood inside the house, still holding Lily. She hid against his chest, holding her breath. When Evelyn turned her head to look, Lily recoiled violently, her whole body shrinking. That reaction caused an officer to pause, his gaze shifting to follow hers. Sarah walked quickly to the door, whispering, Don't let the child see this. Daniel nodded slightly, drawing the curtains partly closed, but Lily still turned her face outward, her terrified eyes glued to the figure standing in the middle of the driveway. Ms. Evelyn Carter, the officer enunciated clearly, we need you to cooperate with an investigation regarding acts of harm to a minor and financial fraud. Evelyn sighed, smiling faintly. You're mistaken. I haven't done anything. This is all a misunderstanding. Hearing this, Daniel's hand tightened on his daughter's shoulder. Sarah looked at her brother, her eyes filled with anger and pity. Adrian tried to back away toward the rear of the car, but another officer caught his arm. Do not leave the scene. I have nothing to do with this. Then stay and cooperate. Police searched the suitcase. Inside was a large amount of paperwork, several portable hard drives, and an envelope containing transfer receipts. Lucas, called to verify, immediately recognized the shell account numbers he had mentioned. Evelyn kept her composure. "Those are my work documents. You have no right to take them." "We have a search warrant." An officer presented the paper. Evelyn stiffened but tried to maintain her posture. Daniel stood silent in the living room, watching through the glass. Lily was shaking, clutching his shirt. "Daddy, Mom!" "Mom is looking at me." "It's okay." Daniel stroked her hair gently. "You don't need to look anymore." "I'm scared." "I know. It's all going to be over." The patio door opened. 2 officers escorted Evelyn inside. Sarah stepped aside to let them pass. The air in the house grew thick. Evelyn stopped in the middle of the living room, her eyes scanning everyone quickly. She stopped at Lily. "Sweetheart," Evelyn said softly, her voice sliding into a whisper, "Mommy only taught you so you would grow up right." Lily began to tremble, her face turning pale. Daniel turned his body, shielding his daughter behind his back. "Do not say another word to my child," Evelyn smirked. "You think you're a good father? You leave for weeks at a time and I'm the only one here." "No one loves by making others afraid," Daniel said slowly, every word distinct. "And she doesn't need to spend one more day remembering you." The police signaled. Evelyn fell silent, turning away. As they led her to the door, Lily suddenly let out a choked sound, like a sob that had been suppressed for too long. Daniel turned back to see her gripping the edge of the table, tears falling, but no sound coming out. "Dad is here," he whispered. "You don't need to be scared anymore." "Will she come back?" "No, I promise." Outside, Adrian was handcuffed, trying to look back at Evelyn. An officer pulled him away. He muttered softly, just loud enough for Daniel to catch. "I didn't think it would get this messy. She promised she'd be done cleaning up before you got back." Daniel stood still, not responding. Evelyn glanced over, her final look strange, somewhere between defiance and fear. The police car rolled away. Sarah sighed, collapsing onto a chair. "It's finished." Daniel looked around the room. No one spoke, only the sound of Lily's breathing and the fading engine noise outside. Mary approached, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Maybe now she can truly be safe." Sarah looked at Daniel. "You need to take her to Dr. Jameson regularly. She needs long-term therapy. You can ask me to help care for her for a while." Daniel nodded. "I will. Tonight. The 2 of us will stay here. I don't want her fearing another trip." Lily was still quiet, her eyes gazing at the closed gate. Daniel sat down next to her, holding her small hand. "Did you hear that, Lily? No one can touch you anymore. We're starting over, just you and Dad." She looked at him, nodding hesitantly. A tear fell onto the back of Daniel's hand. He wiped it away gently, then pulled her closer. Sarah stepped near, her voice low. "I'll stay tonight." Daniel smiled wearily. "Thank you. I don't think I have the strength to be alone." No one deserves to be alone, especially her. Night fell. Once the police had gone, the yard light still cast a yellow glow on the porch. Daniel carried Lily up to her room, laying her in bed. She refused to let go of his hand. "Daddy isn't going anywhere," he said, sitting beside her until her breathing steadied. In the living room, Sarah and Mary were reviewing Evelyn's file. Lucas sent another text. "All transfer documents have been submitted to the police. She won't have any chance to withdraw money or access the house again." Mary closed the phone, looking up. "Will he be okay?" Sarah looked upstairs, where a sliver of light spilled from Lily's room. "He will be. But the girl, it will take a long time to forget." Upstairs, Daniel sat in the darkness by his daughter's bed, his back against the wall. The hallway light slipped through the crack in the door, printing a thin strip of brightness on the floor. Lily slept peacefully, her head resting on his hand. Sarah's car pulled up to the small wooden cabin nestled by the lake. The late afternoon sky was streaked with orange, the calm water reflecting the silhouette of the trees. Daniel lifted Lily out of the car, feeling how light she was in his arms, as if her vitality had been drained after the long days. Sarah opened the door, placed the suitcase inside, then said softly, "Stay here for a while. No one knows this place." Daniel nodded. Thank you. The cabin had only 2 rooms, simple but quiet. The first night, Lily lay right next to Daniel but couldn't sleep. Every time the wind blew across the lake, rattling the glass door slightly, she would startle, sit up, and shrink into the corner of the bed. "It's okay, honey, it's just the wind," Daniel reassured her. Lily didn't answer, her eyes still fixed on the window where the darkness was spreading. She hugged her knees, fingers trembling slightly, as if the darkness outside hid something familiar and terrifying. Near dawn, Lily finally drifted off, but only for a moment. The sound of wind hitting the roof made her bolt upright, gasping. "Dad!" Her voice choked, trembling. Daniel quickly pulled her close, hugging her to his chest. "Dad is here. You were dreaming." She cried without making a sound, biting her lip hard. He could feel every tremor in her body and knew that the dream wasn't just an illusion, it was a fragment of old memory returning. When morning came, Daniel carried her out to the balcony. "Look, there's nothing out there. Just the lake." Lily pressed herself against him, gripping his shirt. A gentle breeze blew, rattling the glass door. She immediately curled up, holding her breath. Daniel stopped, stroking her shoulder. "It's okay, just wind. No one is locking this door." Over the next few days, Daniel tried to get Lily into a normal routine. He cooked, read stories, and walked her around the lake. But her reactions came without warning. Once, while eating, Lily stopped her spoon mid-air, eyes vacant, body motionless. Daniel called twice, no response. He touched her shoulder lightly and she jumped, dropping the bowl of rice. "I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to." "It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." She lowered her face. "If Mom knew, Mom would be angry." Daniel felt a lump in his throat, whispering only, "No one is angry with you anymore. Never again." In the afternoon, Lily sat alone at the drawing table. Daniel watched from afar, seeing her take out the crayons. But looking closely, he realized she used only 2 colors, red and black. The strokes were hard and continuous, as if trying to cover something up. After a while, Lily stopped, looked down at her hand, and then used her fingernail to lightly scratch her wrist, a habit he had seen many times. "Honey, stop," Daniel said quickly, walking over. Lily flinched, eyes panicked, retreating deep under the table, curling up like a small animal cornered. "Dad isn't going to do anything," Daniel said fast, kneeling down, trying to keep his distance. "Dad just wants to help." No response. Lily's shadow huddled in the dark corner, small hands covering half her face. Daniel didn't touch her, just sat still, waiting. A long time later, Lily inched forward, her wet eyes opening slightly. "I don't want to be punished." "No one is punishing you anymore. But if I'm wrong, Dad will teach you, not punish you." That sentence made Lily look up at him longer. Then she slowly crawled out from under the table, still shaking, but she touched his hand herself before sitting all the way out. Daniel held that hand, feeling it strangely cold and frail. He knew every small action like this was a giant leap for her. The following nights, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat on the sofa near the bed, back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. In the dim light, Lily's breathing was steady, but at the slightest sound of insects or wind, she would curl up. Each time, Daniel would gently place his hand on her shoulder so she knew he was still there. The guilt inside him thickened. For years, he had chased work, leaving the house to become a place of terror for his daughter. He recalled every rushed morning, the times Evelyn said Lily was acting out, and he believed it. Regret constricted his chest. One night, Daniel sat in the kitchen, head resting on the table. He didn't know how long he'd been awake. When he looked up, he saw Lily standing in the doorway, the light casting shadows on her face. She looked at him silently, then suddenly ran off, diving under the table. "Lily," he called, standing up abruptly. "Are you mad at me?" her tiny voice asked. Daniel froze, then understood. He walked slowly, knelt down, not trying to pull her out. "Dad isn't mad. Dad is just tired." She was silent, not answering. The sound of their breathing mingled in the long silence. Lily remained under the table, her small hands clutching the hem of her shirt. Daniel didn't say anything more. He just held his position, his hand resting on the floor, waiting. After a long while, her fingertips lightly brushed his hand, thin and trembling, before retracting. Daniel remained patient, not pulling, not rushing. The second time, Lily touched him more firmly, then crawled out, hugging the teddy bear tight against her side. The door opened softly. Sarah walked in, holding a familiar clear plastic box. She sat down, placing the box in front of Lily. "I brought this for you." Inside was the old teddy bear, the one Lily had carried throughout her early childhood, taken away by Evelyn long ago. Lily looked for a moment, then suddenly lunged forward, hugging the bear to her chest. Her eyes lit up, and for the first time since leaving the mansion, the corner of her mouth curved slightly. Mary arrived with Sarah, carrying an old backpack. "I have a few of your things here. I hid them away back then." Inside were small toys, a few scribbled drawings Lily had once made. She touched each item, flipping through every picture, her hands shaking as she realized all the things that had vanished were now in front of her. Daniel watched the scene, his heart feeling both warm and achingly sad. Mary stayed for a while, whispering to Daniel, "You have to let her take the initiative. Don't touch her when she's withdrawing, because even a small movement makes her think she's being punished." Daniel nodded, listening to every word. She taught him how to spot signs of panic: empty eyes, tense shoulders, shallow breath. When you see that, just stay quietly nearby. Let her feel a safe presence. A few days later, Sarah contacted Mrs. Harper, Lily's former elementary school teacher. Listening to Daniel's story, Harper was silent for a long time before saying, "I remember her. Gentle, loved to draw. I'll come." That afternoon, Harper appeared at the lake house carrying a picture book. Daniel opened the door. Seeing her, Lily immediately hid behind the sofa. Harper didn't call out. She simply placed the book on the table, opened the first page, and began reading in a soft voice. "Once upon a time, there was a little cat who was afraid of the sound of rain." Lily inched out a little, then stopped. Harper continued reading, slowly, not looking at anyone. A while later, Lily's small feet peeked out from the edge of the sofa. She moved closer to the table, stopping at a safe distance. Daniel stood by the kitchen door, watching with a heavy heart. Harper read to the end of the story, looked up, and smiled. That cat learned how to sleep peacefully, even when the rain fell. Lily looked at the book, nodded slightly, and reached out to touch the corner of the page. Harper simply said, "You can keep this one. At school, you liked it the best." She hugged the book, saying nothing. That evening, Daniel called Dr. Jameson, recounting the situation. He guided Daniel on creating safe zones in the house: a small kitchen corner with cookies always available, a reading nook with soft blankets and warm light, and a drawing corner. Just those 3 places. No one interferes. She needs to believe there are no punishments there. The next day, Daniel followed through. He set up a small table by the window for Lily to draw, rearranged the bookshelf by the sofa, and added a beige cushioned chair. When Lily woke up, he pointed to the corner. "This is your private spot. No one touches the things here, not even Dad." She looked around, her eyes still suspicious. But when Daniel stepped back, she approached, opened the crayons, and put pen to paper. Dusk fell, and Mary returned with Harper. They sat reading in the living room, Lily sitting nearby, sometimes leaning in to listen, sometimes smiling softly. Harper let her retell the story of the picture she had just drawn, only a few short sentences, but it was her first clear voice in weeks. Daniel stood at the kitchen door, stunned, realizing his child was slowly emerging from the darkness. That night, Whitaker stopped by, holding a toolbox. "I heard the glass door rattling, so I came to help fix it." He climbed a stool, tightened the window frame, then took a small wooden wind chime from his bag. "My buddy made this. When the wind blows, it makes a soft sound, helps you sleep better." Daniel nodded, thanking him. Whitaker hung the chime on the porch. A gentle breeze blew, the chime ringing soothingly. Lily watched from a distance. After a moment, she moved closer, bowed her small head, and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa." Whitaker gave a gentle smile, saying only, "You are very brave." She squeezed the teddy bear in her hand, her gaze softening. That night, Daniel sat by the bed watching her sleep. The window rattled slightly, the chime outside tinkling softly. Lily didn't startle, just hugged the bear tighter, breathing evenly. Daniel smiled, a small but genuine smile, something he had lost for months. He stood to leave, but heard a small voice behind him. "Daddy, are you going to work tomorrow?" Daniel turned. "No, I'm here." "Not going far away again?" No, from now on, I stay home with you. Lily nodded, tucking back under the covers. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, placing his hand on the sheet, waiting for her to grab it, as was her habit. The next morning, Lily woke up earlier than usual. Daniel was in the kitchen, washing dishes after breakfast. Early sunlight streamed through the glass door, hitting his shoulder and reflecting onto the floor. When he turned around, Lily was already standing in the kitchen doorway, holding the hem of her pajamas, eyes hesitant. They looked at each other in silence. Daniel simply said softly, "You're up?" Lily nodded, then slowly moved closer. She stood next to the sink, looking down at the running water. This was the first time Lily had voluntarily approached Daniel without obvious fear. "Dad," she said softly, "I want to go back to school." Daniel paused, water still flowing over his fingers. He turned, kneeling down to her eye level. "Are you sure?" Lily nodded, eyes on the floor, then added in a whisper, "But don't go far away anymore. I'm scared of coming home and not seeing you." Daniel froze. Those quiet words carried more weight than any sentence he had ever heard. He slowly placed his hand on her shoulder, not forcing it, just enough for her to feel his real presence. "Dad isn't going far anymore, I promise. Even if I go, I will come back, always." Lily looked up, her eyes a mix of doubt and hope. Daniel held her gaze, calm and certain. A long moment passed before Lily stepped forward, wrapping her arms around his neck. Her small arms were cold, but they held on tight. Daniel closed his eyes, squeezing her back, feeling her heart beating fast. He knew this child didn't need soothing words. She needed only one thing, the feeling of being held safe in her father's arms. In the kitchen doorway, Sarah stood leaning against the frame, watching father and daughter embrace. She said nothing, quietly turning away. A slight smile appeared on her face, the smile of someone witnessing a block of ice finally melting. In the afternoon, Daniel took Lily for a walk around the lake. She walked beside him, maintaining a small distance, but occasionally she took the initiative to point out wildflowers by the road. Daniel listened, not interrupting, just nodding whenever Lily spoke. When they got back to the house, she looked at him and said, "I'll try to go to school, but you have to take me, okay?" "I promise." That evening, Lily sat in the corner of the room, her crayon box open. Daniel made tea, turning to see her drawing. He approached, standing behind her. Unlike before, Lily's drawings were no longer full of black and red patches. On the paper, there was a blue sky, some white clouds, and in the center, a window opening to a soft yellow light. The strokes were still shaky but firmer, and a faint smile crossed her face. Daniel asked softly, "What are you drawing?" "A window," Lily replied. "Where does the window open to?" "To the light. There's no darkness there." Daniel smiled. He felt her voice had more life in it, even if it was still weak. He let Lily continue, not interrupting. She bent down, drawing small rays of light around the window frame. A moment later, Lily stopped, looked at the picture, then turned to her father. "Do you think it's pretty, Dad?" "It's beautiful. You should hang it on the wall." Lily nodded. Daniel got some tape, helping her hang the picture right next to the reading nook. When he stepped back, she gave a small smile, her first since the day Evelyn left. Sarah saw the scene from the doorway, quietly turning away again, not wanting to break the rare, peaceful atmosphere in the house. The evening passed quietly. Lily sat drawing another picture, Daniel reading on the sofa nearby. The wind chime on the porch rang softly in the breeze. Lily stopped her hand, looking up at her father. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Draw with me." Daniel was surprised, then laughed softly. "Dad isn't good at drawing." "It's okay. I just want you to draw with me." She picked up a yellow crayon, walked over, and put it in his hand. Daniel took it, feeling a bit awkward, and sat down next to her. "What should I draw?" "Draw the sun," Lily said. "In this corner, make it brighter." Daniel held the yellow crayon Lily had placed in his hand, sitting beside her. The lamplight reflected off the white paper where father and daughter drew together. He colored into the right corner of the picture, expanding the halo around the sun Lily had drawn. The yellow strokes spread out, merging with the pale greens and whites she had already colored, creating a broad, warm, gentle light. Lily watched, then smiled slightly, raising her own hand to add rays of light reaching the clouds. Neither spoke, quietly drawing until the sky on the paper glowed with dawn. The next morning, Daniel prepared breakfast early. Lily dressed herself, put on her shoes, and shouldered her small backpack. When he opened the door, she was ready, holding the old teddy bear. "Dad, I'm ready," she whispered. Daniel smiled, taking her hand. They stepped outside, morning dew lightly coating Lily's hair, her hand resting fully in his. On the way to school, Lily took small but steady steps, no longer clinging desperately or hiding behind her father. When they stopped at the gate, Lily looked up, hesitant. The schoolyard buzzed with children's voices. Daniel bent down, asking softly, "You okay?" Lily didn't answer, just squeezed his hand gently and nodded. Walking through the gate, she turned back to look. Daniel stood his ground, watching her. Through the classroom window, he saw Mrs. Harper step forward to welcome Lily, bending down to place a gentle hand on her shoulder. Lily paused for a beat, then stood still, not shrinking away. That image made Daniel take a deep breath, as if a weight had been lifted from his chest. At pickup time, Sarah and Mary were at the gate. Sarah waved, and Lily ran over, her face beaming. Mary handed her a new comic book. "I saw this one. It looked cute. Thought you'd like it." Lily took it, opening it up, a fleeting smile on her lips. Sarah looked at her brother, whispering, "See? She's coming back." Daniel just nodded, speechless, his throat tight. In the afternoon, Whitaker stopped by. He brought the wooden wind chime he had adjusted so it wouldn't ring as loudly. "I tweaked it a bit, just a whisper now. You won't be scared." He climbed the stool, hanging it under the eaves. Lily stood by, watching the chime spin in the wind. "Thank you, Grandpa," she said softly. "I see you're stronger now," Whitaker smiled. Evening filled the house with the smell of food. Daniel cooked a simple meal, vegetable soup, bread, and some fruit. Lily sat at the table, reading her comic while waiting. "Eat a good amount, okay?" Daniel said. "You did good today." Lily nodded, taking small spoonfuls. No drop spoons, no fear in her eyes. When finished, she helped him clear the bowls, though her hands were still clumsy. "Dad, I want to do it like you," she said. Daniel laughed, instructing gently. "Then we do it together, slowly." After dinner, Lily pulled him to the drawing corner. On the table was a fresh sheet of paper. She pointed. "I drew the sun. Look." This picture was different. A large sun rising behind a forest, light spreading across a lake, bright lines, no dark patches. Daniel stared at it for a long time. "You drew beautifully." This light, before he could finish, Lily cut in, "It's brighter than yesterday." Daniel hung the picture on the wall next to the window drawing. The two pictures stood side by side, one escaping darkness, one opening to the future. He stepped back, letting her view her work. Lily clasped her hands behind her back, tilted her head, and whispered, "Now our house has sunshine." Getting ready for bed, Lily placed the teddy bear where Daniel usually sat. He asked in surprise, "You aren't hugging it? I want you to hold it tonight." "Why?" "Because when you hold it, I don't need it to sleep." Daniel fell silent. He understood. The toy that had been her small shield was now being handed over as a sign of trust. He sat down, opening the book Mary gave her. "I'll read to you." Lily nodded, tucking in. The story flowed slowly, his voice even and soft. Halfway through, Daniel looked over. Her eyes were closed, breathing steady. For the first time in months, Lily slept without startling. Late at night, Daniel turned off the main lights, leaving only the dim lamp by the drawings. Lily's two pictures reflected the light, the sun on paper seeming almost alive. He sat for a long time, admiring those fragile yet resilient strokes. Everything he had lost, presence, listening, love, was being reconnected by his daughter's hand. The next morning, while Daniel was making breakfast, Lily ran out from the bedroom, hugging him from behind. "Daddy, today I dreamed I flew over the forest. My son was up there." Daniel set the pan down, turning to hug her. "And was I there?" "Yes. You were waiting on the other side." He smiled, bending to kiss her forehead. "Then that dream is real." Outside the window, early light filtered through the trees, hitting the picture on the wall. The sun Lily drew reflected a brilliant gold, more vivid than ever. Daniel opened the door, letting the wind carry the soft sound of the chime. Lily stood by him, her hand gripping his, no longer trembling, no longer afraid. A new day began, and in that cabin by the lake, the silence that had stretched for so long finally broke, giving way to the small laugh of a child and the peaceful breath of a father who had relearned how to love. And that is our bedtime story for tonight. A long journey, where light truly returned to the lives of Daniel and Lily, from darkness and fear to a moment of peace beneath a new sun. And what about you? After listening to this story, what touched your heart the most? Do you empathize with Daniel, the father who had to relearn how to protect his child? Or were you impressed by Lily, the tiny but mighty girl who dared to step through her fear to find trust again? Please leave your thoughts below. Tell me which character you loved the most and which action in the story moved you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts so we can share, discuss, and continue spreading stories of warmth and healing like this one.